got a little. I don't know if it's a sullen look on your face. I don't know what to call it, but it's a serious look.
Well, A is tiredness.
Okay, fair
First
enough.
of all,
Well, let's
it's
call it that too. But
also it is. I'm thinking about. I mean, it's just so insane on social media right now. Israel, Palestine. Even in the mainstream media, I'm watching these reports about. I don't know, I can't remember the guy's name. I'm sure he's very important because he's very wealthy. But he's given like $50 million to Columbia because he himself is an alum to Columbia University, and he's going to cut off the money because of these pro-Palestinian protests and death to Israel and all this that's going on in these college campuses.
well, let me jump in real quick too, just to give everybody here a context. It's been about 3 weeks since all of this latest
Yeah.
iteration, to call it that, of the conflict and
the ongoing violence between Ishmael and Isaac.
Yep.
I mean, there's really no other way to put it. It's
Yes.
the ongoing violence between cousins.
Yep.
Or stepbrothers, or however you want to put it. Like
Descendants of Abraham, who certainly have been blessed in the blessings of Abraham in different ways.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of them, and they haven't ever got along.
Yeah. And, I preached on this here on our campus. What are we, 2 weeks out from that?
Two Sundays ago, yeah.
Yeah, so it's 2 weeks out from that, and when we're recording this at least. And, I see all this stuff blowing up everywhere, and it's hard to know where to get your information. It's hard to know what to think. I hate moments like this. I hate it. And I hate it for two reasons. I hate it because of the loss of human life. That's the number one thing that I hate. And the other thing that I hate is that, let's talk about Protestant problems. There are going to be 5 million evangelical preachers who hop on this because it's a war in the land of Israel, trying to find a way that this lines up with Scripture to be a fulfillment of prophecy.
Let's figure out a way to
about the end times.
to shove this peg, into whatever shaped peg it is, into whatever shaped hole, to have this make sense in a dispensationalist way about, I'm going to read prophecy to try to make it paint this picture and everything that it is.
This is how close we are to Jesus coming back. And it's just, it's just Ishmael and Isaac, guys. Like, read your Bible. I want you to read your Bible. I want you to look at your Bible to understand this. But this is more easily understood two ways. Number one, this is just Ishmael and Isaac fighting again, because they do. And they have for a really long time. Number one,
and it is horrible.
It is.
But
I'm not saying it's not horrible. I
want to make that clear. Like, we both think it's horrible, but it's not new.
I mean, if the English and the Scottish started fighting again tomorrow, would anyone really be surprised? I mean, there's been some peace for a while, but before that, it was like 1,000 years of, like, do you understand? Okay, I'll go Norm Macdonald.
All right,
who's dead now. I love that guy. I miss that guy. Norm Macdonald, his last public appearance on Letterman was like, you know what nation really scares me? Germany.
Yeah, I'm curious now. Go on.
Well, he said, you remember there's this one time when Germany decided to go to war, and their enemy was everybody. And he said, and so then the rest of the world ganged up on Germany, and you would have thought, well, that should have been over pretty quickly, but no, weirdly, it was close. It was a close war, And then he said, then a few years later, they decided to go to war again, and their enemy was everybody. And again, it was close.
It was worse the second time.
Yeah,
almost.
and so he's like, If Germany decided to get rowdy again, would anybody really be? I mean, I guess some people would be like, well, I just thought they were so peaceful now. There are certain things in life that it really shouldn't surprise anybody. Over the weekend, this has nothing to do with anything, except that I'm hurt over it. I bought these your wife's Dutch.
Yes, she is.
Stroopwafels. Those little stroopwafels.
I've had the ones from Netherlands, and they're great.
Well, I found some that were from the Netherlands. Yeah. There's little Dutch stroopwafels.
You know what they are? They're like these little mini pressed waffles that have like
goo,
like kind of like maple syrup.
Yeah, or it can be like caramel, or it can be chocolate. It can be anything. They stuff it in there.
Yeah,
and it's amazing. And you eat it like with coffee or tea, and it's an amazing treat. I bought my daughter ate them before I could get to them. You know,
like they're gone.
They're completely gone
you didn't have one.
She shoved them in her mouth so fast. Is anyone really surprised by this behavior? That's what I'm trying to say.
I mean, in the sense, I don't blame her. You eat one and then you just want to have all of them.
But she had all of them.
Yeah,
all of them. I can't believe she didn't throw up or have a stomach ache, but she ate all of them. My point is, I'm making a joke to make light, but it's horrible what's going on over there. But it's not new, and no one should act like they're surprised. This is not. So that's the first lens. This is Isaac and Ishmael going at it again. And the second lens is Jesus said before he comes again, there will be wars and rumors of wars. It's funny how quickly Americans, guys, I love us. Can we please be better than this? I'm just asking, can we please be better than this? We're so easily distracted. I haven't seen one Ukrainian flag waving lately. You know what I mean? Like, it's amazing how quickly everybody went one war to the next war. But that war's still going on, and there are other conflicts going on around the world. We're talking about these rockets that are leaving Yemen now towards American installations. But in Yemen, there were other problems with infighting but nobody cares then, right? Because it's a bunch of Arabs killing a bunch of Arabs. Can we talk about racism for a second? No, we're not even going to go there.
Well, let me go it this way, at least with the United States and us in America.
Yeah.
And the whole iterations of wars that we've been in for the last, let's say, 30 years. Mm-hmm. You know, even if you're talking like the little tiny war in Grenada that Reagan goes in and destroys them in a handful of days, or the stuff we were doing with the Iran-Contra affair in Nicaragua, or you're talking about Iraq in 91, or Afghanistan and Iraq again, and all these different iterations haven't put the average person in the United States in a point where you really have to sacrifice. And so the wars become over there, and we've been in a lot of wars, we've been active in a lot of wars, we've been active in a lot of ways where we're sending money, where we're sending weapons, we're doing all these different things, which all fit within the wars and rumors of wars, what Jesus said. But because we're over here and it doesn't really change that much about whether you can get meat or milk at the grocery store, or eggs at the grocery store, like rationing would have happened in World War II, or it doesn't change in the sense of World War II or Vietnam, where the 18-year-olds are getting drafted to go fight in the war. It's just a, mostly volunteer service that is active, and so then our lives don't really change, and it's easy just to forget, oh, that's right, the Ukrainian war has been going on, but we haven't really talked about it.
I'm getting tickled because if we keep up this pattern of warfare that we've been in for 30 years, and they're having trouble, all the armed forces are having trouble recruiting right now. If we keep this up for much longer, there is going to be a draft, and then all of these millennials and Gen Z who wanted their student loans forgiven are going to be in for a rude awakening, because not only did Biden not forgive your student loans, but you're fixing to get drafted. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to laugh my rear end off.
How's boot camp sound?
Yeah, I know. It's just... And I'm trying to make light, and I'm trying to make jokes, because this is a serious thing, and there's a serious loss of life. What people need to understand is that politically, one of the reasons why America cannot turn our back is because Israel is the only democracy in the region.
Yep.
And they're our biggest allies in the region. So you can't turn your back on Israel for political reasons. The other reason you can't turn your back on Israel is because the most number of Jews in the world who live in any one particular country outside of Israel is the United States.
Yep.
So we're not going to turn our back on Israel for very basic reasons, okay? It's not even spiritual or religious or theological. It's like sociological and political and economic. Like, there are reasons why there is no way that America can turn our back on Israel.
Well, and even going,
and it's not even the best reasons, frankly. Like, the best reasons would be humanitarian. It would be, well, you know what I mean? Like,
and let's just talk geopolitics of it for a second. Aside from theology and aside from dispensationalism and prophecy and everything else, but just the geopolitics of it. You go back to it's the late 1940s when the states created, and it was the British that kind of messed it up initially in terms of going through the United Nations trying to get set up, and then you've got the 7-Day War with Egypt and Jordan and Lebanon. I can't remember which of the three are, but that's when they take the Gaza Strip, and some of what they're fighting about now, and these different kinds of things, and these different nations that have happened. But I was watching a guy talking about this a little bit, and he was kind of making this case, and I thought it made a lot of sense to me in terms of the geopolitics of it. So you've got the United States and other portions of the West that are certainly supportive of Israel, like you said, because it's a democracy in the region. You've got largely Arab nations that are all surround that then too, that are various iterations of, you've got the theocracy in Iran or different situations. But basically this guy's making the point that peace isn't really an option because peace isn't really helpful for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
From the standpoint of even just saying the United States, well, we want Israel to be that pocket there that is that bastion against, whether it's helpful in the sense of how we work with our oil interests in Saudi Arabia. You want that tension there because it helps in whatever ways that we're trying to work to get the oil that we need. Or it's helpful in the sense of making Iran the bad guy that they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then flip that around, though, too, then, for the Arab nations, they like having Israel as their bad guy, too. And actually working this out wouldn't really be helpful it would be certainly helpful in, they wouldn't be fighting, there wouldn't be rockets, there wouldn't be loss of life, there wouldn't be beheadings, there wouldn't be all these different kinds of things. Or maybe there would be anyway because it's Ishmael and Isaac, but...
let's talk about the Arab nations for a second.
Yeah.
Okay, number one, the British might have caused this problem, but the Arab nations have exacerbated it, and the reason that they've made it worse is because they refused to take initially refused to take Gazans or any Palestinian. Do you know that there's no such thing as Palestinian people? They're all bits and pieces of other nations around them.
Yes.
Like some of them are Syrian, some of them are Lebanese, some of them are Egyptian, some of them are. They're all bits and pieces of other. There is no Palestine per se. You'd have to actually just create it because for the longest time Palestine was just a province of different empires. It was Roman, then it was Byzantine, then it was Ottoman for like 1,000 years. The Ottoman Empire, ever heard of it? Read a book.
And in the late 1940s, it was British, and then the British helped move.
Yeah, but then it was the mandate line between Syria and Palestine. It hasn't been its own thing for a very, 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 very long time. Okay, since the Seleucid dynasty had it after Alexander the Great conquered it. Like that's how long it's been since that strip of land, whether you call it Israel, Palestine, whatever. Because, by the way, the name of the land changed from Israel or Judah, the southern part, to Palestine under the Romans. They called it Syria Palestina. Mwah. I'm from Rome. Look at my shoes. Mwah. That's what they call it. It's called Syria Palestina, and then that's where we get Palestine from. This has not been its own country in a very, 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 very long time, and it's got a lot of different peoples who have lived there over time for a really long time. So when you talk about people who say, well, we've got a claim to the land just like the Israelis, in a sense, yeah. In a sense, from a biblical perspective, meh. Or if you're going to say that everybody's got a claim to this land, you have to say that everybody's got kind of a pretty good claim over time but then it goes back to Ishmael and Isaac, and then here we go. See, that's the lens. The nation of Israel exists. It was created in 1948, and that nation has a right to exist, and the Jewish people have a right to exist. And what people don't seem to understand about Hamas is that they're not fighting to get their rights back. That's something you say at a protest.
Mm-hmm.
Just so you know, they're not fighting to get their rights back. That's something they say at a protest. Here's what they're really trying to do, because it's in their charter. They don't think Jewish people have a right to exist.
Yep.
That's it. So if you support Hamas, don't talk to me about Hitler, because you're supporting the same sort of genocidal ideology that tried to exterminate the Jews in Germany.
We need to wipe them out to get rid of them, because
the only solution to Jewish people is that they stop existing.
Yeah.
That's what these people want. That doesn't mean that's what all Palestinians want.
In fact, it's not. I don't think I would argue. Probably, it's not what the vast majority of Palestinians want.
I don't know. I don't have any data. Here's what I'm going to say, though. It is what Hamas wants. As an organization, it's what Hamas wants. They want Jewish people to stop breathing. You can't support Hamas. Or you might as well support Hitler and the Nazis. It is that black and white, and that part is that simple. I'm not talking about Palestinian people. I'm talking about the organization Hamas and those people. You cannot support that organization and what they're doing. Or you might as well say, well, if I had been German in World War II, I wouldn't have supported the Nazis. Yeah, you would have. Yeah, you would have, because you're on Columbia University's campus marching for Hamas.
And I think part of what you're saying is you can't support him. Or if you're going to say that you do, be honest with what you're doing.
Be honest with what you're doing. Or just don't support them because they're horrible.
I think that sounds like a better idea.
Don't do that. Yes. You know, it's just, but what's going on here too is I said that they're a conglomerate of different peoples that live there. These different Arab groups that live in Palestine, and we call them Palestinians, like they have a national identity. They don't. They're from other places. None of these other nations took their own people back. And they did it for two reasons. And this is what a lot of Westerners don't understand about this part of the Middle East. These Arab nations and the way they look at each other. There's two reasons they didn't take them back. Number one, if they left them in Palestine and the West Bank, or excuse me, the Gaza Strip and the West Bank and places like that, it would continue to be a thorn in Israel's side. Because the Arab nations were not down with the creation of the 1948 state of Israel. No. They were not. And so if they left these people who were displaced there, they would continue to be a thorn in Israel's side. And that is the first reason why these Arab nations did not take their own people back, who were descendants of whatever degree and how many generations.
Which fits in with what I'm saying of the role of the Arab nations surrounding that. It's not in their best interest geopolitically to advocate for peace.
The other reason they didn't take them back, though, and this is, or that they don't take them back today, it wasn't originally. Originally, it wasn't the issue, but today, one of the reasons why is because Arabs look at people from the Gaza Strip and they see what you and I see when we look at Detroit or
Flint, Michigan. Is that where you're going?
Yeah, Detroit. No, just Detroit in general. Memphis, Tennessee, Compton, in Southern California. Like when other Arabs look at people from Gaza, that's what they see, and they're like, "We're not taking those people." They're those people, and what other people don't get in the West.
And you're just saying like those people, they're a mess. We don't want them.
They're a mess. They've lived for 70 years or whatever it is now under this extreme pressure from Israel. They have. And there's been all this fighting, and so Israel suppresses, and they suppress, and they suppress. And after you've lived like that for long enough, everything in your worldview is just us versus them and its violence. Go to the Arab Emirates. Go to Qatar. Go to Dubai. Go to the Arab Emirates. These people are in 3023 already. Like, these people, don't talk to me about New York. Do you know who's ahead?
They're not struggling.
Do you know who's ahead? It's the Arabs. These cities are the most amazing thing you've ever seen in your life. They're so far ahead. They're living in like 3023 right now, and we think we're something as Americans. We're not. We got left behind, guys. The Arabs are ahead. Singapore is ahead. Like, go to these places. Do these people want to take people from somewhere else who are going to come in and be a problem? Because that's how they look at them. Mm-hmm. They don't want them. So they didn't want them in the first place because it wasn't in their interest geopolitically. Now, after decades of this messed up situation and between
constant iterations of tension and violence, and
now they really don't want them.
Yeah.
And what Westerners fail to understand, because we look at like, okay, I'll see some comedy show, and there'll be a Sikh in the audience. Like, have you seen, or people pronounce it Sikh?
Sikh, yeah.
They're Indians. It's an Indian religion, and they wear the turbans on their heads. And what's the first thing that the comedian says? Well, 9/11. Ooh, they're not Arabs.
Yep.
They're Indians. Westerners can't tell the difference between half the time between, and especially Americans, half the time can't tell the difference between an Indian and Sikhism is actually a very peaceful religion. They can fight. They do fight. But it's actually a very lovely religion. Love these guys.
You wouldn't put them very high on the list to fly planes into the towers.
I'd put them very high on the list to protect my borders.
Yeah.
They make great soldiers. They make some of the best soldiers in the world. They're amazing people. But they're generous. They give to the poor. They're lovely people. But Americans can't tell the difference between a Sikh and an Arab. And they definitely then can't tell the difference between Arabs and Arabs. But Arabs can tell the difference between Arabs and Arabs. And that's what's missing from mainstream media, social media. You got to understand, this isn't just an issue between Hamas and the nation of Israel. This is a conflict that includes tensions and dynamics between Muslim peoples. You know?
Well, and I
why do you think Iran is interested in getting involved? Because they're a different kind of Islam. Like, this is about power struggles in it's about theology for Muslims. It's about ethnicity for Muslims. This is a bigger conflict than just about a terrorist organization and the nation of Israel, which again is why America and other nations will find that they cannot afford to turn their back or look the other way. They're going to be involved because there's more at stake here than simply, and it would be a bad enough conflict. There have already been so many casualties, right?
Yeah.
It would already be a bad enough conflict if it was just between a Palestinian terrorist group and the nation state of Israel. It would already be a bad enough conflict. But because there's all these other dynamics at play, other nations will be pulled into this, including the United States of America. And if you don't understand that, you need to start wrapping your head around it because it's the truth.
Well, and I think that makes me think, at least in the sense of if we're sitting here in Lincoln, Nebraska, we're sitting here in the United States, if you're listening, wherever you are, and the point of, well, this is going on. This has been going on for several weeks now, and it's the latest iteration, but, how do you try to make sense of what to expect? How do you make sense of parsing out the different things you're going to see, from student protests that seem to be, frankly, supporting Hamas to, what's the role for even the Jews that live within the United States and their expectations of support of Israel? And, how do you have an understanding of recognizing that even just from a geopolitical sense, it makes sense that the United States is involved to a degree in the way that we are, and not to have an expectation that that's necessarily going to change, but also wanting to have compassion or empathy for some of the Palestinians that are living in the spots that are having a really hard time, that aren't part of Hamas, and in all these different things. And so for me, it's kind of a couple different things. One is recognizing that it's really hard to know what you know for sure about something like this. You preached on this a little bit, even just the reference of you're not going to know unless you're really
the
the
intelligence agencies are already fully engaged, and there's propaganda on both sides. You're not going to know,
and then also the degree to which, at least my perspective within the United States, the way that our media often operates is everything becomes binary. It's either us against them, and there is a truth to that. If you're talking about Israel against Hamas, there is an us against them side you should take.
And it's definitely Israel.
But
definitely Israel. If you're talking about Israel versus Hamas, there is a side to pick, guys, and it's Israel.
But there's a lot more nuances within that. I mean, you talked about Christians that live in Palestine, Palestinian Christians. You talked about, there's families here that are getting hurt by this fight that you could certainly have compassion for. So I think I mentioned this to you at one point. So Jon Stewart, the comedian, and he's Jewish, and I don't agree with everything Jon Stewart said, but he was just making the comment that he tries to be pragmatic, I think, at least the way that he was coming across about this, that he said it's really difficult for me, he said, because here I am as a Jew, and there's this expectation, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but there's this expectation that you're not really citizen of the United States or a citizen of some government. You're a citizen of Israel. And so there's then no space for him to ever be critical of anything that Israel has done in the conflict.
As a nation.
As a nation.
Right, like as a political entity, the nation of Israel.
How could I ever say anything critical of them
right.
in terms of how they may have treated Palestinians that are not part of Hamas or whatever the example is? And using that as a thing of, there's complexity to this, and we're not going to necessarily understand all the complexity. But then for me, it also then comes down to Jesus saying there's going to be wars and rumors of wars. And I think it's fair to at least to say...
Well, it also comes down to which Jesus we're talking about. We're talking about the same guy that said, love your enemies.
Yeah.
And there's a human cost. I think the pragmatic view of this is that there's a human cost to Jews, to Muslims, to Christians.
Yep.
For all the three Abrahamic faiths, there is a human cost. The longer this conflict goes on and the more it escalates. What we need to be in prayer about is that there starts to be people talking with one another to start to lower the muzzles of the guns again. Because I promise, this peace won't last. Whatever peace we come up with, it won't last. It'll flare up again. The violence will flare up again in the future. But the longer this goes and the more it escalates, the human cost globally will be enormous. We need to immediately see people starting to talk again and say, let's lower the guns.
Lower the guns and let's treat each other like people.
Let's try to find some way.
Yeah.
Let's try to find some way that we're going to start to talk instead of shoot.
And even if that does happen, or even to whatever degree that it does happen, and this iteration dies down a little bit again, it's probably going to happen again. And when I think about Jesus talking wars and rumors of wars as being a sign of we're that much closer to him coming back again.
Yeah.
I don't think it makes sense for you and I or anybody else to try to figure out when that's going to be.
No.
I mean, I think God even...
It's sooner than it was yesterday.
Sooner than it was yesterday.
I'll tell you that much.
And I certainly think that there's truth in the way that Jesus talks and the way that Scripture talks about the closer you are to Jerusalem, sometimes the worse it's going to be.
Yeah.
And so you could look at this and think, okay, well, this is one of the things that Jesus said is going to happen before he comes back again. And so maybe peace is hard to find.
I love that line. Was it Ridley Scott did Kingdom of Heaven or whatever it was? It was about the Crusades.
Oh, I remember the movie, but I haven't seen it in a while. Yeah.
And this French guy played by Orlando
Bloom,
turns to the actor playing Saladin, and he says, "What is Jerusalem really?" And Saladin turns to this French crusader. He's like, "Nothing. Everything." Like, when you say it's going to get worse the closer you get to Jerusalem, what is the land of Israel? Jesus said, the true worshipers will worship neither on this mountain nor on that mountain, but will worship in spirit and truth. So it's nothing.
Yep.
And it's everything.
Yep.
Even people who don't know anything about Abraham, if there's a conflict on that stupid strip of land,
it's not even very big.
It's not even very big. The whole world gets pulled right back into it, whether they want to be or not, because it's Jerusalem. It's the holiest city on earth. It's therefore the bloodiest city on earth. And it's sad that that's the way it is, but that's the way that it is.
And what I mean by that, in the sense of, as we're watching this stuff and you're trying to make sense, how do I make sense of this?
Yeah.
One of the things for me is then to run back to know that, if we're going to talk, even the way Paul writes in Romans and talks about the rulers and authorities have been put and they've given their authority by God himself, and trusting that that's true, even though that they don't use the authority in the ways that he would like them to or the ways that they should, but also trusting that his wrath and his judgment is one day coming. Yeah. And we're that much closer. Today we're closer than we were yesterday. And I know for certain what Jesus Christ has done for me, what he's done for you, and that he one day will come to judge and put this all to an end. And it isn't up to me to fix it.
No, but it is up to you to pray.
Amen. Yes.
It's not up to you to fix it. It is up to you to pray. Because we are the priesthood of all believers. If we don't pray for the world, who do you expect is going to pray for the world? Hamas, while they're murdering people and screaming, God is great, please do not misunderstand that as a prayer. It's not.
Nope.
And we are the priesthood of all believers. If we do not pray for our Jewish brothers and sisters, if we do not pray for our Palestinian brothers and sisters, if we do not pray for humanity, then I'm not sure who exactly we expect to pray for the world. It's our job. So it's not your job to fix it, but it is your job to pray. So covenant with us, make an agreement with us that we're all going to pray for peace to come to that region again. And because it's a terrible, terrible, terrible loss of life. And
it's messy, it's ugly.
Yeah, it's very ugly. It's the whole thing's very ugly. And we need peace to come again. It's not going to come tomorrow. Israel is in fight or flight, and they are fighting hard, and they're gonna. And right. I don't blame them. I really don't. They have a right to exist, and our Jewish brothers and sisters need our support. Please understand that this is a human cost, though. It isn't about just groups, and it definitely isn't binary. It's not black or white, one or the other. This is a human cost, and we need to be praying for peace.
Sounds good to me.
All right. We'll catch you next time.